The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
Welcome to Squawk Box. I'm Karen Cho with Steve Sedgwick, and these are your headlines. Nvidia shares hit a record high before CEO Jensen Huang takes the stage at CES, outlining his intention to expand the company's reach in robotics, gaming and autonomous vehicles. The co-CEO of Samsung Electronics tells CNBC exclusively the South Korean heavyweight plans to boost its on-device AI strategy while welcoming rivalry in the sector.
We compete with China a lot. It's more helpful for us who have a lot of competitors. From a consumer's point of view, they can get better products and better serving products. So I think we need competition.
Tencent taking a hit, leading losses in Hong Kong after the US adds the Chinese tech giant to the list of companies allegedly working with the Chinese military. Elsewhere, President-elect Donald Trump rejects reports he will look to water down his tariff threats, whilst the 30-year Treasury yield hits its highest level in 14 months. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announces his resignation after 9 years in the role. And now wait for this, the former Bank of England Governor Mark Carney amongst the contenders to replace him. Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Day two, you're going to be firing as well, especially after mistakenly I ambushed you on an early battle yesterday, and you're going to be...
I had a very strong coffee this
I'll have
morning.
him today.
And I've got a green
I didn't
tea
even do it on
lined up.
purpose, it was just a story. How are you anyway?
Very well, thank you.
I'm good, apart from the viewers spotted me doing this on the headlines,
Yeah.
which is basically telling the camera 4 to go down a bit.
Not some sort of I'm cool on the school, cool with the
Is
kids
that a cool
or whatever.
thing for the kids?
I don't know.
I don't know. But what I've been thinking a lot about is what everyone is we're all data driven. Well, we're data driven on one front, but we're not data driven on the other, i.e.
Are we data driven this year?
Because of rates.
No, but
So the Fed-
yesterday the big move was in Nvidia stock. Yeah. That was not data driven. That was a hype story. It was a story of hope, optimism, a big cycle unfolding around AI.
That's kind of like the third wheel of this three-wheel. I don't even mean it's four wheels. I think it's basically Trump, tech momentum, and interest rates. And you're right, Nvidia, we'll park that over there because the data surrounding Nvidia will basically be, obviously, the numbers, they miss the whisper, we go down aggressively. They beat the whisper, we're going to go up aggressively. And it's the same momentum story there. But data and Trump don't matter, but data and the Fed do matter. And let me just explain that very briefly. Data and Trump, we're all looking backwards now. Whatever the GDP of 2024 will finally be, whatever the inflation rate at the end of 2024 finally will be, etc. The JOLTS data, I love JOLTS. I'm obsessed by things like that. It doesn't matter for mostly on the macro now and that yield as well, because on the Fed front, it does. On the Fed front, absolutely, the Fed are sticking to their mandate. Are they going to be cutting rates at all in 2025? But as far as Trump is concerned, we just don't know. And I think Carl Weinberg from High Frequency has really summed it up. This is the great uncertainty, and I couldn't agree more.
I was going to take it from a different perspective because yesterday, despite the Nvidia story, we had a lot of Elon Musk as well, which was really interesting on the European political front. But we also had the yield story on treasuries. And this is ahead of the Wednesday auction. So the yield on the 30-year spiked. We saw it there. The 10-year has been climbing as well. So that's that slow boil. And keep in mind, this is a market that is expecting rates to come down this year because we've again got a cycle of cutting by the Federal Reserve. But if you're looking at longer end rates still marching higher, that is a story of heat on debt markets. Equity markets typically don't like that. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that auction lands this week.
That yield is marching higher for many reasons. One, obviously, the data's great. With the weekly jobless claims last week, they were down again. The 4-week rolling average really tame. So one on the data, I think, is supportive of a high yield. Secondly, there is enormous uncertainty about tariffs as well. And of course, with bigger deficits being run, maybe finally a story which transcends Democrat or Republican, i.e. the size of the broader deficits, the size of the issuance that is needed, maybe that's finally beginning to actually get into the psyche of bond investors' heads. There's going to be a lot of paper. You're going to have a lot of choice. Ergo, why don't we make the issuers pay a little bit more for it?
We were talking about this all through 2024, whether it could be a threat for markets this year. So I think it is one we keep in mind. Often the threats are ones we have discussed. I mean, you look at last year and we were talking about whether the Japanese could roil the market. And indeed they did. That eventually came. Nobody thought it would happen, but it did happen at some point. So as we talk about the issuance, whether it's going to land,
and therein lies the biggest problem for every one of our viewers. We could sound like Cassandras the whole time. Oh, you got to worry about this. You got to worry about this. And it's our job to say these things because most of our guests own the market, and they're going to say, "Yeah, it's great. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." And to be fair, they've probably been right because the market's gone up. It is our job to question them. It's our job to worry about these things. But every one of those risks, they ain't going to happen. They're not going to happen every year. You know, one of them might be a pertinent factor in 1 year as well. But it's our job to keep moaning about these risks. Otherwise, it's just going to be everyone's just going, yay, cheer the bull market.
Are those risks still there in the backdrop? And I just referenced what happened on markets yesterday. I mean, we saw a Dow that was in reverse, and we didn't see much in the way of percentage gains on either the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq if you stripped out the Nvidia factor. And Nvidia was the big moving name. We saw the CES keynote, and the market was really setting up for what Jensen Huang would say. And we had some after-hours moves as a result, as he really fleshed out various industries where Nvidia product could actually catch hold. And you saw 3.4% up on Nvidia stock, but taking with it a whole bunch of other chips in the sector as well. The chip player around Broadcom, Micron, and the VanEck Semiconductor Index bouncing 3.3%, which encompasses these names. Nvidia has unveiled a new family of consumer gaming chips that use the company's Blackwell technology. Speaking during his keynote address at the CES 2025 event in Las Vegas, Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang said the chips will be available on desktop and laptop computers from March.
It is incredible, but we managed to put these in gigantic performance GPUs into a laptop. This is a 5070 laptop. For $1299, this 5070 laptop has a 4090 performance. I think there's one here somewhere. Let me show you this. This is look at this thing. Here. There's only so many pockets. Ladies and gentlemen, Janine Paul. So can you imagine? You get this incredible graphics card here, Blackwell. We're going to shrink it and put it in there. Does that make any sense? Well, you can't do that without artificial intelligence. And the reason for that is because we're generating most of the pixels using our tensor cores. So we ray trace only the pixels we need, and we generate using artificial intelligence all of the other pixels we have. As a result, the energy efficiency is just off the charts. The future of computer graphics is neural rendering, the fusion of artificial intelligence and computer graphics.
So size matters was the point there, but for the tech industry, it's always about shrinking and being more powerful. The other big theme for me was that we've been talking about data centers for AI. This was a big shift yesterday towards smaller, more compact devices that developers can use, that businesses can use. So it really just changes the narrative around the revenue model for Nvidia.
Stop buying. They've got their off ramp.
Absolutely.
We haven't talked about the key issue. Is that a snazzy new leather jacket of his? I was just looking up. I just put onto a well-known search engine that isn't Bing. Jensen Huang jackets. Have you seen how many black leather jackets? This is the beast, though.
Well, this is a shiny leather, not a flat leather.
This is shining. I think there's a hint of crocodile about it as well. I mean, look at that. I mean,
it's catching the light.
He has, and I'm looking here. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 different jackets. I mean, he rocks a leather jacket. You know, it was like the late great Steve Jobs. You know, it was the turtleneck, wasn't it? The black turtleneck as well, and others have owned their look as well.
It's quite an old look.
Well, he's 61.
Right.
I just checked that as well.
I mean, we've all worn a black leather jacket over the course of time, haven't we?
Yeah, I've got to a certain age where I tried to kind of dress down a little bit to kind of not make myself look a bit like a sad middle-aged man.
I still have a brown leather one. Do you have a leather one?
No, but you look. Have you got a brown leather jacket? I bet you look great in it.
Thanks.
Can you bring it into work? I bet you look great.
I was thinking it was not working.
Is it like a box jacket? Is it like a box jacket, or is it a long coat?
Yeah, it's a short and cropped one.
Oh, fantastic.
Bit Jensen Huang-esque.
Oh, look at you. Chinese competition. Chinese competition is a good thing, according to Samsung Electronics Vice Chair and CEO Jong-Hee Han, who has been speaking exclusively to our very own Sherry Kang. Sherry has plenty. Sherry, do you rock a leather jacket as well?
Of course. Who doesn't? I wonder, actually, that's one of the questions that I had this morning. Do you think that Jensen Huang secretly wants to wear something else, like a cashmere sweater, rather than a black jacket once in a while? I don't know. But no black leather jacket in this particular...
Do you know what I think, Sherry? I think he grew up like me, watching Fonzarella. Yeah, the Fonz. I mean, there's a man who could rock a leather jacket. Anyway, I believe you have other things to talk about as well.
Yeah, so no leather jacket here, but we've got a Samsung Electronics interview, of course, a rare one, I must point out here. And this is really the devices division co-CEO, Mr. Han Jong-Hee. And his key message at CES 2025 has been really, we can do it all. And they kind of do it all, right? Samsung Electronics does mobiles, televisions, washers, and refrigerators. And it's really about connecting them and providing a seamless kind of experience for users. Here is a part of our conversation around the competition and how Samsung's AI strategy can be different. Take a listen.
We compete with China a lot. It's more helpful for us who have a lot of competitors. From a consumer's point of view, they can get better products and better serving products. So I think we need competition. In terms of what sets us apart from their products, when the Internet of Things era started 10 years ago, our premise was that the future home is a smart home. What goes with that is, above anything, security-related technologies that have improved a lot. We are getting security-related approvals and awards for home appliance security. The basis is that it's safe to use. Also, it's not just Samsung products connected. It's through various SIMs, so that you can do it automatically. It's not like I'm browsing Wi-Fi and connecting to it with my password. It automatically connects you once you are connected to our smart things. It's a technology called calm onboarding. I think it will be more differentiated if such technology is further developed.
Give me your demand outlook for 2025. Do you see consumers feeling subdued across the board in 2025? Is there any market that gives you a bullish outlook?
Looking at the overall market demand this year through various forecasting agencies, I think the overall market growth will be between 2.6 and 3%. I think our mobile unit will grow by 4 or 5%. In the case of TVs, home appliances, networks and medical devices, it is showing a slight growth from a slowdown. We set a goal of growing more than the market. We've made some strategies for that, and we've been explaining new models to our clients recently. We expect a slightly higher growth than the industry.
And at CES 2025, Samsung unveiled laptops with AI capabilities and this lineup of Vision AI, so basically AI enhancements to their TV lineups as well. And just to get back to the Nvidia angle, it's quite interesting how the recent narrative around Nvidia has been robotics as its sort of next bet for future growth. And Samsung is on that as well, because just late last year, on December 30th, I believe, that Samsung has unveiled its major investment, increasing its stake in this local robotics company, making it as a subsidiary under Samsung branding as well. So that is really what Samsung is working on. And of course, this comes after a year of a pretty clear struggles around the chip business, the stock declining more than 30% in 2024. We'll see how they fare in the new year. Guys?
Thank you very much indeed for that, Sherry. I'm sorry, I'm still on the leather jacket front as well. Okay, so most famous leather jackets in history.
Oh, you've really gone searching for this.
Yeah, I have. I love it. Come on.
There's one from years ago.
Yes.
Early on, he was
Marlon Brando, the wild
pin-up boy of the day, right? Yes,
Marlon Brando.
Exactly. That was where it started.
Steve McQueen, pretty much any movie,
yes.
including he managed to wedge one into The Great Escape as well.
Right.
But
Tom Cruise.
Yes, all controversial because he changed the motive on the back so as not to upset people politically between the two the two Top Gun films. That's really interesting. No, I've got one for you. Matrix has just come into my ear.
Nice,
yeah,
yes.
that's not a jacket, it's more of a coat.
Was there a Wolverine one?
Probably. He's wearing that
Jackman, Wolverine,
yeah, I like
yes.
that. I'm thinking classic you, late 70s, before your time.
female.
Yeah.
So a Farrah Fawcett one.
Sandy.
Oh, of course.
Grease.
Yes, sorry, yes, of course.
And she's, obviously the late great Olivia Newton-John as well.
Yes, of course.
Anyway, apparently we've got to move on. Apparently it's not the fashion show. We're not Trini and Suzanne. Although I fancy myself as a... Anyway, you can watch Sherry's full interview on CNBC.com. Right, let's get back on track.
Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang touted the automotive sector and robotics as potential areas for the company's growth as he addressed CES. Huang said he expected automotive revenue to grow to $5 billion in 2026, up around 25% from this year.
Ben Barringer looks good in a leather jacket.
I bet he does. Let's get to Ben, see whether he's wearing one for us this morning. Ben Barringer, not wearing a leather jacket, but a vest today, joining us. Ben Barringer is Global Technology Analyst at Quilt Cheviot. Thank you so much for joining us, Ben. I want to get into what we heard from Nvidia, because the big question yesterday as we were setting up for 2025 was whether Nvidia could make it a hat trick, a third year in a row in terms of monster gains for shareholders. Was there anything in the news flow around new sector areas that it's going after, a new supercomputer that you can sit on a desk? Was there anything in this that you thought investors could run with?
Yeah, look, very much so. I think there were three areas that he really wanted to cover in his keynote. Obviously, it's the consumer electronics show he's talking at. So, their heritage is very much in graphics cards. And so there was a new graphics card, the Blackwell 50 series, twice as powerful as the last one, 92 billion transistors in a graphics card. So that's pretty impressive. The second area was, there's been the two things that have sort of held the stock back in the last few months have been concerns around scaling laws. And he sort of covered why he thinks scaling laws will continue. And then also Blackwell is a rack scale solution. And so it has lots of different versions of it, depending on whether you want different cooling or networking. And there's actually 200 different variants. And so it's very hard for the supply chain to give accurate data around what's happening with Blackwell. So there's been a lot of Blackwell news around the supply chain. So he wanted to confirm that was on track. And then thirdly, and absolutely you're right, now that graphics cards is a small part of the business, data center is 88% of the business, he wanted to talk about the new markets that they're working on. So AI PCs, we've had a little bit on that, and I think we'll get more on AI PC in Computex because they're working on on an AI PC with MediaTek. Robotics, we've already touched on as well. They talked about Cosmos, which is their physical AI large language model, basically trying to get computers to look at hand movements or factories, real world applications for AI. And then finally, more on automotive. I was very lucky to take some Waymo rides when I was in Arizona recently. And so there's a lot around autonomous vehicles, autonomous taxis. And they said, they're working with pretty much all major car OEMs. They added to the list Toyota in the keynote. So no major financial news or big things, but in terms of new markets for Nvidia to address, that was, I think, the focus for Jensen.
And that new market, which is autos, we know that there's been just a string of bad news from the sector, which effectively means the industry is somewhat cash-strapped in terms of new investments. So while Toyota may have been lined up as a new partner in addition to Mercedes and Volvo in the past, we're still tapping a sector that does not have the investment dollars that would make a huge difference at this stage. I mean, we're talking self-driving cars down the track. EV is the biggest challenge so far. So do we really hold much hope that there's upside from this $4 to $5 billion a year number that Jensen Huang's talking about?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's easy to think that semiconductors just have done brilliantly for the last couple of years. Actually, things like auto, industrial, even PC and smartphone semis have not been, great markets. And so then you've also got an inventory correction happening in auto semis as well. And so I think what Jensen's really driving at, though, is just increased content spend. So, even if you've got a flat sales number in terms of autos or even down, you're still going to grow the amount of compute that goes into cars. And so he's very much playing for the longer term. But you're absolutely right. The autos industry is not in a good place, even with electric vehicle penetration, which has been rising and has flattened off, particularly in Europe and the US. They're still going to drive at a new market for people to get their hands on. As I say, autonomous taxis, I think, is a very interesting area because that changes the whole nature of how we could own cars, whether people need driving licenses in the future and so forth. As I say, having been in an autonomous vehicle, I felt very safe and very assured. I genuinely think it's a better mousetrap, autonomous taxis.
Yeah, you've obviously been in the car with my wife. It's safer being in an autonomous vehicle, I can assure you. Nope, she's not up. I'm safe. Ben, you've gone there, so I'm going to go there as well. Nvidia and those chips that are, working with the likes of Waymo, who are working with all the OEMs. You've constructed a web of links there as well. Does that mean that Nvidia on 32 times is a better own than Tesla on 126 times because they're the latest prints?
Yeah, look, we think so. Obviously, Nvidia is going through a little bit of growth pains at the moment. So you've got it on 32, 33 times for about 50% earnings growth. And we think that those earnings growth is well underpinned by data center capex, enterprise interest, and also sovereign, and we do a lot of checks in the supply chain to make sure that that's sort of reassured. So yeah, Nvidia, not cheap, but certainly growing well. The only issue is, growth is slowing. Last quarter it grew 90%. This quarter it's going to probably grow 70%. That's always difficult for investors when you've got slowing. But we certainly think it's better value than Tesla. Tesla, there's a lot in there for the car business, but then there's also a lot of sort of hopes and the association with Donald Trump as well, which is very hard to value. That was what you said at the top of the show. It's very hard to quantify the Trump effect, if you will.
Perennial question, and I will continue to ask you this forever, Ben, as well. How good is the moat that Nvidia has got compared with the Oppo? Great, they're doing brilliant things. It looks fantastic. The market loves the shares, but is the moat intact everywhere?
Yeah, look, I think it actually is. If you look at the threat that you saw this time last year from AMD with their MI300 series, I think Nvidia's moat has actually got better versus certainly AMD. Nvidia's a big company. It's got CUDA, the software assets. It's got the networking assets, and it's continually, investing huge amounts in R&D to make sure that they continue to move from graphics cards to data centers to robotics to autos and so forth, and really are at the next wave. The rise that we've seen certainly in the last sort of 6-9 months has been from custom chips. So you've seen very good performance from Broadcom and Marvell, and that's where there's potential threat there. But I still think that that software ecosystem for Nvidia is pretty hard to beat. But as we move from training more to inference as the bigger market, I think they're not going to be as dominant in inference as they have been in training.
Got a leather jacket, Ben?
No, I was thinking about a leather gilet, but
yes,
but maybe that's a bit too much of a risk.
Leather gilet, you're so English country, aren't you? You're so East Sussex, Ben. I think you're more of a Biggles, actually, with a big furry collar. How about that?
Very good, and the flying helmet.
Yeah, you've got to wear the flying cap and then have the white silk scarf on a hanger. Lovely, Ben. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Ben Barringer, who is Global Technology Analyst at Quilter Cheviot. I can't get Indiana Jones.
Right,
another famous jacket, because obviously
he
puts his hat and his leather jacket on and he's a different persona, isn't he?
I'm sure the audience...
A bit like me with a microphone.
I'm sure the audience has thought about 10 different options and busting to share it with us. So as they get involved...
I think we've nailed all the big ones now.
We may not have.
Well, John Travolta and Sandy come as one, of
the
course.
Surface.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Is it me? Yes, it is. Tencent shares are sinking after the US added the tech giant to a list of Chinese firms that it says are helping the Chinese military. The US Defense Department also added battery maker Cattle to the list, as well as China's largest shipping company, Costco. Tencent and Cattle say their inclusion on the list was a mistake. And for more on what the move means for Tencent, check out CNBC.com.
I have a name for you, Steve. Yanis Varoufakis. Remember when he was resigning on the back of the Greek crisis?
On his
leather jacket.
And he, but he didn't drive a motorbike, did he? I think it was a moped. I'm pretty sure it was a moped. Doesn't
That's
quite
so
count.
cool. Let's tell you what's coming up. Plenty ahead. We're going to be talking about Congress certifying November's election results on the anniversary of the 2021 Capitol riots. Details next. Plus, European leaders denounce the influence of Elon Musk, warning he should not involve himself in their politics. And we'll take a deep dive into the retail space as fourth quarter UK sales figures come in soggy. Don't miss our conversation with Richard Chamberlain, Global Co-Head of Consumer and Retail Research at RBC Capital Markets, 8:30 GMT.
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes.
That's awkward, isn't it? That was Vice President Kamala Harris formally certifying her election defeat to President-elect Donald Trump. The joint session of Congress ended without drama 4 years after violent attempts to disrupt the process. Elsewhere north of the border, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced his resignation, confirming he will step down as leader of the country's ruling Liberal Party. Trudeau said internal party divisions meant he would not be the best candidate in the next election. Former Bank of England Governor Mark Carney has long been linked with a political role in Canada. In a statement issued to a number of media outlets, Carney said he is considering running in the leadership election and that he is encouraged by the support of MPs from the Liberal Party. US President-elect Donald Trump responded to Trudeau's resignation in a post on Truth Social, suggesting Canada should merge with the United States to create a great nation. Trump said the US could, quote, no longer suffer the massive trade deficits and subsidies that Canada needs to stay afloat.
OK, the President-elect's son, Donald Trump Jr., is set to visit Greenland shortly after his father said the ownership of the island is a necessity. Trump confirmed the visit on Truth Social, saying the people of Greenland will benefit, quote, if and when it becomes part of our nation. Tesla CEO and ex-owner Elon Musk also weighed in, saying the people of Greenland should decide their future and he believes they want to be part of the United States. Well, leaders from the UK, France, Germany and Norway all pushed back on Elon Musk in separate statements yesterday, denouncing his influence and warning he should not involve himself in their country's politics. We'll discuss this later on. Ultimate Fighting Championship CEO and friend of President-elect Trump, Dana White, is set to join Meta's board of directors. Extraordinary. The move comes just 2 weeks before Trump's return to the Oval Office. John Elkann, well, we all know John Elkann is, don't we? The doyen of the Agnelli family, CEO of the Italian holding family Exor, and Charlie Songhurst, former Microsoft head of corporate strategy, also joined the board. What a mix.
Thank you for listening to Squawk Box Europe Express.
For more market-moving news, you can head to CNBC.com.
Or join us again on the show with Steve Sedgwick, Karen Cho, and myself, Arabi Lekumete, weekdays on CNBC.